The Type 7 U-boat was the workhorse of the U-boat fleet. Although they did not have the range of the larger Type 9 U-boats, the medium-sized submarine was easy to build, required a relatively small crew, and yet had the range and armament to effectively carry out submarine warfare in the Atlantic. This functionality made it popular with the Kriegsmarine, and it became the most produced submarine class in history, with 730 Type 7 U-boats built. While they had their limitations, the Type 7 U-boats were powerful attack submarines with some of the best all-around performance characteristics of the war. But every design requires trade-offs and sacrifices, and on the Type 7 U-boat, crew habitability was low on the priority list, and one of the places this showed was in the boat's toilet. A Type 7 U-boat had only 2 toilets, or in Navy slang, heads, for the 50-person crew, and as one was near the galley, it was often needed for food storage, leaving only one place for the submariner to do his business. But the number of toilets wasn't the only problem. Submarine heads are notoriously difficult plumbing because the water pressure keeps you from easily just dumping the waste into the ocean as you would usually do on a normal boat. Most Allied submarine designs of the war used holding tanks to carry crew waste until it could be dumped. It was still complex to manage the plumbing without it backing up, and clogs in the system were, and in fact still are on modern submarines, common. The head on the American S-class submarine was notoriously difficult to operate, but even then, storage requires space and weight, and both of those are limited commodities on a submarine. Thus, German U-boats used a system that flushed the waste directly into the sea without a storage tank. But the limitation was that the system could only be used when the submarine was on the surface or in relatively shallow water. A submarine that dived in deep water to protect itself from attack, therefore, would not have a functional toilet. While that is never a good thing, the problem grew more acute as the war went along. While the Type 7 U-boat was produced throughout the war, their service in large numbers came mostly after the early war period, that period that was called the Happy Time. Type 7 U-boats mostly operated in a period after the Allies had improved their anti-submarine techniques and increased the number of planes and ships designed to hunt the U-boats. A U-boat in 1943 was obliged to spend much more time undersea in deep water than one in 1940, and running at a depth shallow enough that it allowed the use of the head increased the risk that the submarine would be detected and attacked. Crewmen were thus forced to relieve themselves in buckets, which would sit and hopefully not spill until the boat could safely surface and dump the waste. World War II submarines were already a smelly affair. Notoriously poorly ventilated, they tended to stink of diesel fuel, cigarettes, and body odor, but adding open buckets of human waste made it a whole lot worse. When U-boats would return from patrols, the stench would often be so bad that dock workers who got on the boat would be caused to vomit. But German engineers do like a challenge, and in 1943 started issuing a new high-pressure toilet on its submarines. In simple terms, the system uses a series of valves that directed the waste towards a hull to an airlock, which then ejected the waste out using air pressure, essentially a sewer torpedo. While that allowed the use of the head at greater depths, it was a complex system. The system was in fact so complex that specialists had to be trained in the operation of the toilet. The valves had to be opened and closed in an exact order to keep the system all going in the right direction. Enter the U-1206. Built in Danzig, Poland, the Type 7C model submarine was launched on December 30th, 1943, and commissioned on March 16th, 1944. 67.23 meters long and displacing 769 tons while surfaced, mounting 5 torpedo tubes, 4 on the bow and 1 on the stern, an 8.8 centimeter deck gun, and a robust anti-aircraft array of 2 20mm and 1 37mm guns, the U-1206 was one of the last U-boats to be commissioned during the war, and was fitted with both the new snorkel underwater breathing device and the new high-pressure toilet. The boat participated in maneuvers through the summer and then was assigned to a flotilla. It was not ready for patrol until the spring of 1945, and after 2 training patrols, on April 6, 1945, left on its first combat patrol under the command of 28-year-old Captain Lieutenant Adolf Schlitt from a base in Norway. Just 8 days later, on April 14th, the submarine was cruising at a depth of 200 feet off the coast of Scotland. They were 8 nautical miles off the easternmost tip of the coast of Scotland at Peterhead in Aberdeenshire. The boat was stopped working on an issue where the engine was failing to recharge the batteries. According to Captain Schlitt, as they were working on the repairs, he received news that there was a leak in the forward part of the boat. Someone, by some accounts the captain himself, although it may have been another officer, had tried to use the high-pressure system head without consulting the toilet specialist. Unable to work the system, the specialist was called, and, misjudging the problem, the specialist opened the sea valve while the toilet valve was still open. The pressure from the depth caused the seawater to be pushed in through the toilet, spewing the salt water, as well as the toilet contents, into the boat. The bilge pump failed to operate, and water started filling inside the pressure hull, some flowing down onto the boat's batteries. The mixture of seawater and the high-capacity batteries started producing poisonous chlorine gas. The toilet malfunction had suddenly imperiled the boat and her crew. The crew managed to get the boat to the surface, despite it being flooded with seawater, and began venting the boat to clear the gas. But so close to the coast, they were quickly spotted by RAF planes, who started attacking the boat, killing a crew member and doing enough damage that the boat would be unable to dive. Captain Lieutenant Schlitt realized their situation was hopeless. He threw his code books overboard and ordered the crew to open the flood valves and abandon ship. According to Schlitt's report, the crew reached the Scottish coast in rubber dinghies, but in the attempt to negotiate the steep coast and heavy seas, 3 crew members tragically died. Several men were taken aboard a British sloop. The remaining 46 members of the crew were taken prisoner. 16 days later, on April 30th, Adolf Hitler committed suicide, and 8 days after that, Germany surrendered. The wreck of the U-1206, the famous U-boat that was sunk by its own toilet, was not discovered until May of 2012, finally found by divers at a depth of about 86 meters, some 12 miles from the coast of Scotland. Captain Lieutenant Schlitt survived the war, passed away in 2009, the age of 90. If you enjoyed this History Guy short, then feel free to click that like button, subscribe to our channel, and check us out on Patreon, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and our merchandise on teespring.com.